Hello, everybody. My name is Jackie Rowe, and I'm one of the marketing managers here at Cisco Meraki. And today we're going to be taking you through Meraki for Education. Now, while we wait for the last few people to join the webinar today, I want to take a quick moment to look at the agenda. We're first going to start off with an introduction to Cisco Meraki for those of you who might not be too familiar with the company or the product portfolio that we have on offer. Then we're going to take a look at why we're seeing so many IT professionals moving towards cloud networking and cloud-managed IT and why this might be an ideal solution for you. Then we're going to spend the majority of today's time in a live product demo showing you the features and the functionalities of the Cisco Meraki solution as they pertain to education. Then we're going to wrap everything up today by taking a look at some next steps, different product families that we have on offer. And if you do have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into the chat or the Q&A box of WebEx, and I'll be periodically taking a look at those and answering them out loud for the group. I'm also pleased to announce that for all the qualified IT professionals in attendance today, we will be giving out a free MR33. This is an 802.11 AC Wave 2 access point, along with a 3-year cloud management license. This device is yours to keep. We want to put it in your hands and really have you try out the features and the functionalities of the Meraki solution. Now, in order to get that access point, we do ask that you call in to confirm your shipping information, as well as check your eligibility details. Now, you can find your eligibility details at meraki.cisco.com/free-AP. And in order to get that device, you can find your representative's contact details in the reminder email for today's webinar, or you can reach out at meraki.cisco.com/contact. Either way will work just fine, but we do need to verify your shipping information before we get this device sent out to you. We want to make sure that we send it to you and it gets to you in your hands and is not shipped to a random street corner somewhere. So like I said, we do need to hear from you. It's a really quick thing just to confirm your shipping information. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit about Meraki, who we are and what we do. We are a 100% cloud-managed IT solution. So what does that really mean? Well, as you can see on the graphic on the left-hand side there, we have 6 main product portfolios. So we have the wireless access points, indoor and outdoor models, 802.11 AC Wave 2 devices. We have our unified threat management devices. These are our security appliances. We have access and aggregation switches. We have our communications portfolio, our enterprise mobility management platform, as well as the latest addition, which are the security cameras. Now, all 6 of these product portfolios are in constant communication with the cloud, which is doing the heavy lifting of monitoring and managing all that complex information that happens on your network and within IT, and giving it to you in a very easy to understand way in Dashboard. So what is Dashboard? Well, Dashboard is your browser-based management tool. No matter where you are in the world, whether you're sitting just down the hall from where your devices are deployed, or whether you happen to be at home, or whether you happen to be on the other side of the world on a holiday, it doesn't matter. You can log into your Dashboard account from your computer or from your mobile device and have instant visibility into exactly what's happening where on your network. You can troubleshoot, you can configure, etc. Now, Meraki is the leader in cloud-managed IT, and in fact, we are among Cisco's fastest-growing portfolios. We have over 250,000 unique customers, 3.5 million Meraki devices online, and over 5.5 million active Meraki Dashboard users at any given point. So whether you are just a small school with maybe just a handful of APs as a need, or whether you're a large multi-academy trust, or whether you're a boarding school, or it doesn't matter what size school you might have, the Meraki solution can be an ideal fit for you. So how does it work? Well, it's a completely out-of-band control plane, so no end-user traffic passes to the cloud. Only monitoring and management data passes to the cloud, and it's a very minimal impact on your overall network bandwidth. We also have data centers around the world, including 3 right here in Europe, and those are in Frankfurt, Munich, and Dublin. Now, what that means for you as an EU customer or an EMEA customer is that when you first create a Meraki organization, you simply choose that you're part of the EMEA region, and it ensures that your data and your network data stays right here in Europe, and that is compliant with EU privacy laws. Now, we do run third-party security audits as well as daily penetration tests to ensure ongoing security, because it's not just about the security of the network itself. In education, it's also about the security of the students and their information. So we are trying to make sure that we are as secure as possible. And we have an entire section of our website dedicated to this at meraki.cisco.com/trust. So why are we seeing so many IT professionals moving towards cloud networking, especially in the education industry? Well, there are key drivers here. So the first one is network scaling. So you need to support a lot of things, everything from digital learning to online testing. You need to support when the network is online, as well as when there are even more clients than necessary or than you can possibly handle on your network. We have solutions that can help with that, whether it's just a handful of users or large outdoor football pitches or stadium type deployments or amphitheaters or things like that. So the other thing that we're talking about here is digital learning. So it's not just about scaling the network and making sure that you can support all of the new initiatives that are coming out, as well as all of the students and all of the devices that they're bringing in. But it's also about supporting things like BYOD. So oftentimes we see schools that will either distribute out devices to their students in a one-to-one fashion or in a cart fashion, or we see a lot of students actually bringing their own devices. And they expect these devices to work in classrooms so they can take notes, they can access e-textbooks, things like that. And so we want to make sure that this content is delivered digitally at school, at home, wherever their needs are, so they can continue their education in a seamless pattern. Another key driver here is analytical decisions. We want to make sure that we're using technology to measure student learning and do that in real time. We don't want to be relying on information from 2 years ago, which is sometimes how quickly these types of informations come out. So we want to make sure that we're always staying on top of what we're doing, how our students are learning, because therefore we can then take our network and adapt it. We can take our teaching methods and adapt it, and we can essentially start creating students that are learning faster, they're learning more intelligently, and they're retaining that information. And so we want to be able to track behavior and progress for personalized learning. And the last thing here is security and compliance. We want to make sure that we're providing a safe and secure learning environment. Like I said, it's not just about the security of the network, it's also the security of the students. So we want to make sure that we're protecting data and complying with any security regulations. Now, across the board here, the Meraki solution can help with these particular key drivers. And on top of that, having a cloud-managed IT infrastructure makes handling these things a lot more intuitive and a lot easier. So let's talk about some key challenges that we talk about, or I talk about when I talk to our customers. I'm hearing more and more that there are all of these devices that people are bringing in, and the IT team is simply expected to handle them. And so whether it's a school-owned device or whether it's a student-owned device, it is imperative that IT has control in some sense on what content the students as well as the teachers have access to on their devices, whether the devices are on site or at home. And so that is a massive aspect here, is being able to look at a device and say, who is the user that is accessing this device, and are they old enough, or do they have the right permissions, or whatever it is, to access that type of content. And so we have a lot of fail-safes built in so that you can say, all right, even if it is a device that's being used by multiple students, you can require each student to log in. That can then connect back to an Active Directory server, and then the device can actually reset itself based on the parameters that that student is permitted to have. The next thing, and the key challenge here, is keeping the network secure. We talked about this on the previous slide, but with technology becoming a core part of education, we really do need to make sure that the network is not being compromised, that students and faculty are not at risk. There are countless, thousands of potential attacks every single day of cyber criminals trying to access information. And I'm not saying that as a scare tactic. It is honestly a fact. It's a statistic. I can point you to it. And we want to make sure that when you are using technology in schools, that is the last thing on your mind, because you know that your network is protected. You know that the devices that the students are using are protected, and therefore the students and the faculty are all protected. And then the last aspect here that's a key challenge is that there are limited IT resources. Whether those resources are simply man hours, whether it's funding, whether it's devices that you have to use, the point is that most education IT people that I talk to have some type of limit. And so you need to make sure that your network can actually make up for some of those limitations. So for example, if you have a limited budget, the Meraki solution over time has a better ROI, return on investment, than a lot of other traditional solutions out there. because you don't necessarily have to lose man hours in setting up the network or doing troubleshooting or doing updates or things like that. That's all built in. There's no additional cost for updates or new features that are released. It's automatically included. And so we want to make sure that whether it's man hours or budget or whatever the case might be, that these devices are actually doing more for the IT infrastructure and for the school than just your traditional box that sits on the table and doesn't give back. So now let's talk about Meraki for Education in IT. So a few key things I want to talk about. The first one here is high density. So a lot of areas in schools don't necessarily need to support high density, but when you start thinking about what types of areas you see in school, you see a classroom that might have somewhere between 10 to 30 students in a classroom. You might have an auditorium where you're seeing 50 to a few hundred students in an auditorium. You might have a library. You might have all of these spaces that you need to make sure that whether there is only one student or whether there are 500 students, that you can provide seamless wireless connectivity for those students, a seamless even wired connectivity for those students, no matter what they're trying to do. And so with the Meraki solution, you have a range of different devices at scale based on how you're going to be using them, whether you're deploying them in a hallway, whether you're deploying them in a per classroom basis, or whether you're deploying them in those high density situations. In terms of safety and security, we have a lot of options that are built in along the way, from your security appliance to the switches, to the wireless access points, the security cameras themselves, as well as the devices that the students are using. So we're going to be talking about that security that you can actually implement along the way. Then we have a lot of tools as well. So you have out-of-the-box analytics. So again, this is going to allow you to see what's going on with your network. So quite recently, I had a conversation with one of our customers here in the UK, and they actually were boasting about how many lost devices they've now been able to recover because they have the Meraki solution in place. And they've been able to do this in a number of different ways, whether it's because they have enterprise mobility management installed on the device and they can track where that device went, or whether they can see, all right, this device is associated with this access point, and the last time it was seen was here. And all of these different methods of actually finding these devices and recovering them. And so that's just one aspect of the tools that are built in, the analytics that are built in. But then you can also see how users are interacting with the network. So for example, if you're supporting a digitization campaign in your school, well, you can actually see how many people are using these digital resources that you're providing. Do you actually need to have a chat with the teachers and say, look, you know, we have these resources in play, we've invested in them, let's take advantage of them. These are some things that we can do with it. So you have a lot of that, the tools, the analytics, as well as the troubleshooting tools to make sure that you don't have to be reactive if there is a problem. You can be proactive. You can be monitoring the network and receive automatic alerts and notifications if something happens. And then device management. This is what we call Systems Manager. Enterprise Mobility Management, so you have everything from the device management, content management, application management, and then that key one for security, mobile identity. So you can actually have the device change what it portrays and what it has access to based on who the user is. Now let's talk a little bit more about high density, whether it's high density in one particular area or whether it's high density across an entire school. So the Meraki APs are, as the slide says, designed to deliver that superior performance in the highest density of environments, whether it's classrooms or outdoor areas. And like I said, we have brand new access points that are designed to actually handle these specific high density scenarios, whether it's a general use device or whether it's a high density access point with directional antenna to allow you to really customize that space. In terms of security, we have a lot of different features built in, like I said, to the entire portfolio of products that we have. On our security appliance, we have threat protection. So you can actually just flip on, it's enabled or disabled, it's a drop-down menu, the level of threat protection on your device, whether it's things like advanced malware protection, whether it's things like content filtering, which is powered by Redbirds BrightCloud to get always up-to-date content categories. So you have all of this information in there, including, like I said, that intrusion detection that allow you to see what's actually going on with the network? Is there somebody that's actually trying to do something that's suspicious on your network, or do you simply just need to filter the type of traffic that comes in to protect students? And then the latest addition to our product portfolio, which are the security cameras, allow you to have simple visibility into what's going on where. And the beauty of the security camera is that you don't need any additional on-site software, hardware, etc. It's just a camera. All of the footage is actually stored on the camera, and you can pull it up in real time and watch the camera, or you can actually highlight certain areas of a camera and do a search and say, what happened? Show me any clip, any video clip where motion happened in this area that I have drawn a box around. And so it allows you very quickly to say, I don't need to press fast forward and watch 3 days worth of footage. I can simply say, tell me when this device was moved, highlight the area where the device was, and sit back, and it'll pop up the 2 or 3 instances where there may have been motion detected in that frame, and you can view them on demand. And then tools. Tools to help deliver best-in-class IT. So the automation, this is something that's huge. It allows you to get into Dashboard and actually troubleshoot very quickly, configure very quickly. You can clone configurations. You can tie configurations to templates. You can quickly make adjustments and bring brand new SSIDs on with a mouse click. So for example, if you needed to provide a brand new learning space for students, you can simply say, all right, click, we have an SSID now available, and it's in this particular area. And when you're done with it, you can just turn it back off again so you can keep your network secure. Now, learning initiatives, this is something that I think is quite crucial to talk about. So with the Meraki system, you can very easily and very confidently launch, whether it's one-to-one, BYOD, or simply launching out groups of devices that a whole host of students might use. But what you can do is you can use these devices and push content and software out to those devices. You can add or remove applications depending on what the lesson plans are. You can block harmful content. You can locate, like I said, those lost or stolen devices. You can even allow teachers to have access to their classroom's devices. So you can give teachers limited permissions, so role-based administration permissions in Dashboard to control all of the devices in their classroom and say, today we're taking a test. I want to lock down all of the devices in my classroom into a single application, and that application is our testing application. So it's very, very simple to manage everything, but then also to allow teachers to manage things. So once again, we're taking some of the weight off of the IT team and actually giving roles and responsibilities to teachers so that they can be even more flexible in their education environment. All right, so I've talked quite a bit now. I'm going to go ahead and share a Chrome window with you. Now, before we started today's webinar, I logged into dashboard.meraki.com. and I entered in my username and credentials, as well as went through two-factor authentication, so I'm using Google Authenticator. And when I logged in, I'm taken to this overview screen. Now, on this overview screen, you can see exactly where your network or networks are deployed. So here at Meraki, we have our Sydney office, our San Francisco office, as well as our London office, despite the accent. That's where I'm sitting today. That's where I am. And I can click into one of these networks because the node color is actually indicating the network health. So red is obviously not the best, so I can click in and understand why are we seeing network showing up as red. I can dive in right here and start investigating. I can also expand out this network list here and see all the different networks that we have, the number of clients and the amount of bandwidth they've consumed over the last week. I can see over here in the firmware status column which of my networks are up to date and which of them are tied to a template. Now, under templates, you're going to configure them under organization, configuration templates. You can create a template. I'm going to give you an example of a retail customer we have, but they have about 12,000 shops here in Europe. And what they did is they realized that they had small, medium, and large size locations. And so they created 3 templates, a small, a medium, and a large size template. They configured those, and then what they did is they bound the networks to those templates. So they did not have to configure 12,000 templates and networks. They only had to configure 3. And if they ever need to go back and make a security update or anything like that, they can make it 3 times in the templates, press save, and it will automatically enforce out to all 12,000 sites. So those are the configuration templates, and I simply wanted to highlight here that you can see which of your networks are bound to a template. Now I'm going to go ahead and click into our San Francisco headquarters. Bearing in mind I'm sitting in London right now, so if I wanted to get to that office, it would probably be 14 hours with commuting time and plane and whatnot. And if we have somebody that's raising an issue or complaining about something, we can log in very quickly and see what the situation is. Now, we have a customer of ours, Woldingham School, here in the UK, a boarding school. And because it's a boarding school, it's an all-girls boarding school, their IT team has to essentially be semi-on board all day long, 24/7. Because if there is an issue and somebody needs to use the internet to do research for a classroom project, or they need to have let's say a Skype conversation with their family, they need to be able to access the network. And so one of the brilliant things about this solution is that it enables the IT team to troubleshoot remotely from their homes without having to be on site all the time in order to make sure that the girls are taken care of. And so that's a brilliant part of the dashboard, is that they can be sitting at home, receive an email or notification, and log in very quickly and figure out what the problem is and fix it. Now, what are we looking at here? I've clicked into our San Francisco network, and I'm taken to a client overview page. Now, on this client overview page, I can see all the different clients we've had, about 2,400 clients in the last day. I can see their bandwidth usage over time, as well as the applications that are contributing to that overall application usage. Now, what I can do from here is say, all right, let's say that we had a student, let's say George. George is complaining that he cannot connect to the network. And so what I can do is search on George's name and very quickly narrow down from about 2,500 client devices to 2. I can open up George's device and start investigating. Or maybe George's problem is that he cannot connect to the printer. So I can search on a printer. And I can click into one of these printers and again start finding out more detailed information. So this is George's iMac. We can see here which access point he's logged into, how he logged in using 802.1x authentication. Down here, I can see his usage over the last day, applications, etc. Now, if George was complaining about not being able to access the network or having a slow network, I can take a look at the event log or even run a packet capture for this particular device. So again, built-in troubleshooting tools in Dashboard which allow you to do things like this. Run a packet capture on the specific device that we're looking at, view the capture down here in this box, or download the PCAP file and view it in Wireshark. Up to you. So there are a lot of really great benefits that are built in here that do allow you to be more agile with how you're actually confronting some of the problems that might have arisen. If you're complaining about a network not printing for whatever reason, well, I can click into the printer. And this printer happens to be connected to our switch network. And so I can actually go in here, again, run an event log, a packet capture, etc. Or I can click directly into the switch as well as the switch port that this particular printer is plugged into. We'll get to that in a minute. But you get the idea. It's a very, very simple thing to come into this main page, search for a user, a device type, an operating system. You can tag devices, so you have all these different options in here, and start investigating very quickly. Now, I don't have enough time today to talk about every single one of our products in full detail, so I'm going to try and give you a highlight reel of some of the things that I think are important for education. Obviously, like I said, it's not going to be everything, but if you do want to get more detailed information about any of the features or the products, please reach out to your Meraki representative. They'd be more than happy to walk you through any of those demonstrations that you'd like to have. Okay, so we're on this page, and another common scenario that I hear about quite often is we want to see who is consuming all of the bandwidth, or what application is using all the bandwidth. So not only can I sort based on usage on a particular user and see the top users, I can also expand out this application pie chart here and sort based on usage and see the top users of bandwidth in terms of applications. So for example, here at Meraki, we're a corporate organization, we're not education, but still, we don't really expect to see things like iTunes or Spotify in the top set of applications. I expect to see things like WebEx and Salesforce. So what I can do is I can click into one of these applications and start investigating. I can say, is it one user that's actually contributing the most to this rule? So is somebody abusing their network privileges? Or actually, is it a lot of different users that are slowly driving it up? And then based on that answer, I can make a decision on what to do. So here we have this top user here, and they are using 23% of this rule. That's quite a bit. And so I can click into this user right now and say, all right, what exactly is he using it for? Well, I can view this here, and 94% of his overall usage is on iTunes. And I can see that most of that happened during the daytime hours yesterday, when he was supposed to be at work. And so what I can do is say, all right, you're abusing your network privileges. I can ban this student or this employee from the network and leave them a message that says something along the lines of CIT, too much iTunes. And now they're going to have to go explain to you or the IT team or whoever it is why they were not doing their homework, why they were not paying attention in class, and why is it that they were using so much iTunes. And so you can very quickly add them to that. Now what they're going to do is they're going to get that splash page. Now if you talk to them and they say, I'm so sorry, it'll never happen again, you can move them back to a normal policy. Or if you're like me, and I'm a bit cynical, you can add them to a group policy. Now a group policy is a subset of your overarching network policies. So we have one in here that I've created called Bandwidth Abuser. So I can click on that, and then it'll add this user to this group policy. Now, you're going to configure group policy up here under network-wide group policies. I'll come back to that in a minute. But what this allows you to do is say, for certain students or teachers or whatever, I'm going to add you to group policy. So instead of following the network-wide policy, you're going to follow this more restrictive one. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the network itself is quite restrictive, and you're going to add students or teachers to this group policy that actually gives them more access to the network, so unlimited access. It's up to you. But that's a group policy. That's how easy it is to take action if you're running into a student or whatever it is that's actually abusing their privileges. Now, if you find out that it's actually many users that are slowly driving it up, then you can take action here under wireless. So what we're going to do is come over here to firewall and traffic shaping. So this is how users are interacting with your network. That's what we're looking at right now. So on this page, we have layer 3 firewall rules, which are pretty self-explanatory, as well as layer 7 firewall rules. And so I can click on this, I can type my URL into this box right here, or I can choose from a particular set of applications that our engineering team has already fingerprinted for us, and choose that I want to deny all software and antivirus updates because they hog the bandwidth. Then I can come down here and say, all right, I have a limited pipeline coming into my school in terms of how much bandwidth I have. So you know what? I want to set a per client limit. I'm going to set that at 500 kilobit per second, and I'm going to set a 5 meg limit for the entire SSID. And then you can go one step further and start shaping traffic on the SSID. So here, it's very similar to the layer 7 firewall rules, except now these are traffic shaping rules. So what we can do is add an application and choose something like video and music and say, actually, we don't really want our students on iTunes, nor do I really want them on social web like Instagram or Facebook or whatever the case might be, Twitter, etc. And what I can do now is once I have these applications in this list, I can simply throttle down the amount of bandwidth available to those. I can add another one and say, but you know what is important? I think that applications like, let's say productivity applications or even things like Skype are important. Because maybe what we're doing is having Skype conversations with individuals from another country and another industry. So maybe you're having a really cool Skype call with a doctor who's based in Singapore, for example. And you can have a Skype call with that particular doctor for your classroom and have them start learning more about what this doctor is doing. But if we do that, we want to make sure that we have a great connection. And so I'm going to set a priority DSCP tag. And we're doing this on an SSID level right now. So you're saying a quality of service rule on an SSID level. Really, really simple to do. And then in terms of a group policy, let's take a look at that really quickly. Up here, it's very similar to what we just set up on the network level, except now what we're doing is setting this up on a per user or per device type level. So here we can set up layer 7 firewall rules, we can set up traffic shaping rules. In this particular one, I've denied access to video and music, and I've limited peer-to-peer applications. And then I can go, all right, but I actually really only care about this during the school days. So 8 to 5 during the weekdays. That's it. And actually, maybe it's more like 8 to 3. Not sure. But you get the idea. You can start bringing this down and customizing when you want these different policies to be active. Okay, we have a little bit of time to go through all the products. So bear with me. Let's start with access points. Now, with our access points, it's a very simple thing to configure and monitor and manage your network. So what we're going to do is this is a list of all the APs that we have within our network. You can tag them in a number of different ways, and I can click into them. And remember I said remote troubleshooting? Well, once you click into this device, you can see information about the device, live data, current clients, as well as historic data and past clients that have connected. You can also come up here and look at an event log, take a look at the location of that device. You also have the ability to look at live tools and do things like ping the device remotely, look at the RF information, things like that. So there's a lot of great tools built into the access points, including things like automatic RF optimization, as well as wireless intrusion detection and prevention. And that's something that we call Air Marshal, and you can monitor that here under Air Marshal. Now, how are students actually logging into these APs? Well, over here under Access Control, you can very easily see how users are logging in, whether it's a pre-shared key, whether it's your own Radius server. If you set up your own Radius server, you simply need to type in your host port and your secret. And then once users type in that information and authenticate, then what? You can have them click through a splash page where they have to acknowledge the fact that they're going to follow the school's policies if they're going to use the network, for example. You can also have them sign in with their own username and credentials. So, for example, if you want to set this up with Active Directory, then you can set up different rules and restrictions within Active Directory to limit what it is that they have access to. You can also do sign-on with Systems Manager Sentry. Now, what this does is it says, it brings up a splash page and says, I see that you want to access this particular SSID. That's great. But we're going to integrate this with Enterprise Mobility Management, because if you want to access this SSID, you must have EMM installed on your device. And if you don't have it, we're going to prompt you to self-enroll your own device. And what this does is it allows you as an IT individual to run a scan on their device. It allows you to say, if the device is compliant with these security policies, meaning maybe it has disk encryption, maybe it has a passcode enabled, things like that, then you can access these resources. Oh, and by the way, because I see that you're signing in as a student, we're going to assign a profile to your device within Systems Manager that says you're not allowed to use your camera during the day, you're not allowed to play games during the day, things like that. And by the way, here are all of your school materials, push applications out to your device, things like that. So that's all done with Systems Manager. And what you're doing here is partnering Systems Manager with your wireless system to say any device that wants to get onto the wireless needs to be a school-approved device and needs to have all of the applications and features that a school device has, which e-textbooks, things like that. All right, in order to configure these, as you scroll down the page, you're going to see a lot of things. Drop-down menus, click-through buttons, fill in the blanks, things like that. So you can set up walled garden, captive portal, VLAN tagging, content filtering on an SSID level, module forwarding, etc. Now, let's take a look at Systems Manager, because we're talking about the clients and what the students are doing. So with the client devices, you can enroll Systems Manager on things like iOS, Windows, Chromebooks, MacBooks, I already said Windows, Android, Chromebook, Samsung Knox Chromebooks, etc. Listing a few of them over and over again, I get that. But in this list here, you see all the different devices. And I'm just going to search for, let's say, an iPad, just to prove a point. I can click into an iPad. And now we get detailed information about the device itself. I can see the charge on that device. We really need to charge that device. I can see whether the device is jailbroken, whether it's compliant with geofencing policies. So for example, you could say that while a student device is on school premises, you have access to A, B, and C. And when the device leaves school premises, we're going to remove that access and maybe give access to something else. So you can actually choose how the device behaves based on where it is within proximity of your own network. You can also set up a security policy to say a device is only going to get these things if it's compliant with the security policies that we have in play. And so this is telling you whether or not the device is compliant with security policies. If we scroll down a little bit further, it's very simple to set up a device into a single application. So for example, this is our receptionist iPad. And we use this for guests to log in. That's all we use it for. So we've actually locked this device into an application called Envoy. You cannot access any other applications. This is it. This is all there is. And so it's a really great way to kind of keep an eye on what a device is doing and to make sure it's being used appropriately. And again, you can give teachers the ability to control some of this information on their own for their own classroom. Also on Systems Manager, let's talk through a few of these. Let's talk through one of the parts of Enterprise Mobility Management, and that's Mobile Application Management. So here you're going to partner this with your iTunes Store, your Google Play Store, Amazon App Store, etc. You can add apps, so I can search on something like Maths, for example, and pull up Maths, choose the application that I want. I'm just going to choose the top one here, and say, great, I want to install this on all of devices. Or maybe actually I only want to install it on devices that are tagged as student. And I can select that, and now only devices that are tagged as student or whatever else it is, fourth year, fifth year, etc., is going to get this particular application. You can also do mobile device management. This is also part of EMM. So we've talked about mobile application management. Now let's talk about mobile device management. Here, again, like I said, you can assign a device to a profile. You can have as many profiles as you want. You can see here if I click into this list here, we have quite a few of our own. But I can click into one of these profiles, and here we can take a look at the restrictions. So you can allow or deny the use of camera, installing applications, allowing in-app purchases, Safari, iTunes, etc. So you have a lot of really great tools here that actually allow you to control how the device is being used. You can also automatically have the device connect to a wireless network or client VPN. You can also do mobile content management with things like Backpack. So with a Backpack item, you can automatically push resources out to a device, so different types of content out to that device. You can also require a passcode. The device or the student has to put the passcode in, or the teacher has to put it in, but there has to be one on that device, or else they are not compliant. And then you also have the ability to do mobile identity management. So again, depending on who is logging into that device or the status of that device, whether it's compliant with security policies, whether it's within the geofenced area, etc., what's available on that device can dynamically change. And that really is a brilliant thing, because you're making sure that whatever's on that device is appropriate for the student using it. So this is what a security policy is. We can say that a device is compliant with our security policy if there's things like disk encryption, antivirus, as long as the device is not jailbroken or compromised, things like that. So that's Systems Manager. And then geofencing is very, very simple as well. It's simply a matter of typing in a location or drawing a circle on a map on what is or is not compliant. So this is as easy as it is. Just make that circle bigger, smaller, and depending on whether the device is inside or outside of that geofenced area, once again, you can have the device act and behave in certain ways. All right, so we've talked about wireless, we've talked about Systems Manager. I'm going to move over now and talk about our switching portfolio, because I think that there are still quite a few things, even though it's just a switch, there's quite a few things that your switch can actually do for you. Now, this is a list of all the switches that we have. I'm just going to click into one of them here, just click into a random switch. And when I'm in this switch, again, I see information about the device. It looks very similar to what we saw on the AP level. But I can then click in and see what's going on a per port level. I can say, all right, what's going on with this particular port? I can set up a per port configuration, so enable or disable it, set up the type. I can also set up something called wired authentication, so things like an access policy. Now, the way this works is, let's say you have an access point up on a wall or a phone in a room that is power over Ethernet. Well, what's stopping a student from taking the Ethernet cable, or not even the student, but anybody really, from taking the Ethernet cable out of that device, plugging it into their own device, and getting access to the network? Not very much. So what you can do here is say, all right, I'm going to lock down that port. And so you can integrate this with an Active Directory server, for example, and say, based on who the user is, we need you to type in your username and credentials if you want to have access to the network. And so that's a great way of locking down the network to make sure that nobody is accessing inappropriate information on the network. Everybody is accessing the network who should be accessing the network. If I scroll down a little bit further, we also can set up port schedules. So a port can be turned on or off, enabled or disabled, during certain times of the day, depending on what you choose. So now this port isolation and the access policy, You apply it on a per port basis, but you'll configure it over here under configuration, switch configurations. I'll get to that in a minute. And then the last thing here is port isolation. This is quite useful for halls of residence, dormitories, things like that, because you can say, I actually don't want all of the rooms to be able to talk to each other, so I'm going to enable port isolation. Now what we've seen here, this is on a per port basis. Like I said, if we come over here under switch, you configure general access policies and port schedules over here. We'll get to that in a minute. Now the other thing that you have here, again, is power information, so the hot swappable power supplies, event logs, as well as live tools. One of those live tools is actually a cable test feature. So I'm going to see which port is currently active. So 13 is an active port. And so I can run a cable test down ports 13 to 15, and it's going to report back to me the overall status of those cables. Now, as you might be able to tell, I come from the US based on the accent, and one of the customers that we had over there before I moved to the UK was in Texas. And when they deployed the Meraki solution, they were getting a bit frustrated because a lot of their APs weren't functioning, and they couldn't figure out why. Because they put in new APs, new switches, things like that. What they found out when they used this cable test feature is that many of the cables over the years had actually become exposed to the elements outside, nature, squirrels, who knows what. And so a lot of the cables were damaged, and so they had to be replaced. But they wouldn't have known it that easily until they ran this cable test, unless they had this cable test feature. So it tells you the link, the overall length, and the status of the cable in each of the twisted pairs. So it's a really great way to keep an eye on what's going on with the network and do some remote troubleshooting. Now in the switches, like I mentioned, we have access policies and port schedules. We'll take a quick look at how to configure that. But under access policies, it's quite simple. You just create as many of them as you want. So we have a few of them here. You type in the name of it, your radius server, and then any guest VLAN that you want to dump the user into if they cannot enter in their username and credentials. And that's it. That's as simple as it is. You can also set up a walled garden for this type of authentication. And then the port schedules, again, this is depending on when you want different ports to be enabled or disabled. And so you can have different port schedules. We happen to have one here. I can change it to only school hours, maybe shorten up the school hours depending on the day of the week. And that's it. So then you can say, actually, during the evening hours, we don't need these APs to be powered. We don't need these phones or this printer to be powered. So we're just going to disable the power because it's great for security and it also does save a bit of energy. Now on the switches and the switch ports, these are incredibly simple to configure. So you can configure an entire switch in a few minutes. But then let's say you have 10 other switches. Well, let's take that example. So let's say I just finished configuring switch 2.1.1. But now I have these other switches that I also want to be configured the same way. Now I don't want to have to spend another 15 minutes on each additional switch. So instead I can highlight all of these switches, come up to the top of the page here and click on clone and say I actually want it to be cloned exactly like closet 2.1.1. Click clone, and when I hit that, it's going to clone all of those switches and update all of their configurations. I'm not going to do that now because I really think that people would be upset with me, but you get the idea. And then the other thing that you can do is something called virtual stacking. So I can come over here under switch ports and actually monitor and manage and configure whole groups of switch ports across many different switches as if they were one single entity. So for example, if I know that I want ports 8 and 9 configured a certain way, I can search on ports 8 and 9. We've got 3,000 switch ports, so it's just narrowing that down for me real quick. I can search on ports 8 and 9, and then what I can do is select all of those switches, switch ports, and then click Edit, and actually edit them in aggregate as if they were one single entity and not distributed across multiple different switches. And this editing box looks very similar to what we just saw earlier on a per port basis, except now we're updating 200 ports. And you can enable things like the port schedules, port isolation, things like that. Okay, let's go ahead and move on now. There's just two other things I want to highlight quickly. Let me just load up one other feature, and then I'll come back to it. All right, so this is our security appliance. I think this is really important for education. So this is the device that sits at the network edge. And when we click into it, we see that it is a unified threat management device. So it does many, many things all at once. If we click into the appliance itself, we'll see great information about the device. We see very similar to what we've seen on other devices, summary information, live tools, etc. If we go to the summary report, this is what we were just looking at a moment ago. This is a great page to keep an eye on what's actually going on within your network. You can see top appliances, top clients, top applications. You can even see top block sites and top threats. Now, in terms of keeping your network safe, you can come over here to Firewall. And instead of doing something at the SSID level like we were doing with the AP, we can do something at the network level. So here you have Layer 3 firewall rules, and if we scroll down here, we're also going to see the option to set up Layer 7 firewall rules. Again, you can type it into the box here or choose from a pre-fingerprinted application. You can even do geo-based IP firewall rules and say, I want to block any traffic that's not coming to or from the UK. So if you just want to keep it nice internal, you can do that very, very easily. Also, instead of just blocking traffic altogether, we also then have traffic shaping. Again, this is at the device level, so the network level versus the SSID level. And it's incredibly simple to set up the traffic shaping. It's just like what we saw on a per AP level. Add a new traffic shaping rule, find the application that you want, and then you can limit the amount of bandwidth available to it or prioritize it depending on what your needs are. In terms of threat protection, and by the way, I do realize that I'm going quite quickly through this, but I'm trying to give you a nice overarching view of everything. But in terms of threat protection, it's simply a matter of a drop-down menu, enabled or disabled for things like advanced malware protection, or if we scroll down, you can enable threat grid, or even that intrusion detection, put it on detection or prevention on a high mode, and then set up what your rule set looks like. And then the last thing on here that I want to highlight for the security appliance is it does actually have one of the most elegant site-to-site VPNs that I've seen in the industry. You can set it up in about 3 mouse clicks. That's just right here. I'm not going to go too much into detail on that, but I want to highlight this real quick, content filtering. Here we partnered with WebRoot's WriteCloud, so we get always up-to-date content categories. And to add a new category, you simply click into this box, and then you can find the type of category that you want to add to the list, and that's it. You don't have to keep the contents up to date. You simply trust the WebRoot's WriteCloud to do this. You can also set up search filtering as well as URL blocking depending on your needs. Now, the other thing here is that VPN configuration. I mentioned if you do have multiple sites, we have a customer, Woldingham School. They actually set up a site-to-site VPN between their main school and one of their guard stations where their main gate is, so that they don't have to go down to the guard station every time somebody pulls up. What they can do here to set up that site-to-site VPN is actually just choose hub or spoke. If you choose spoke, you select your hub, that's it. Or sorry, mesh or hub and spoke. And then you choose which of your VPN connections you want to have broadcasting across the network. And that's it. That's as simple as it is. You most definitely can integrate this with non-Meraki VPN peers. You just type that information in there. All right. Now, one of the final things I want to show you here on the network level is if we look here, this is a network-wide topology. This is real time. You don't have to set this up. It just pulls based on how things are plugged into your network. But you can see exactly how everything is interconnected. You can expand out sections of the network if you want to see more detailed information. But the circles here are your access points. The rectangles here are your switches. And we also have things like cameras, telephones, etc. And if you hover over something that's alerting, it'll tell you why it's alerting and what you need to do to fix it. So it's a really useful thing. You can print it, you can add it to a larger Visio file, etc. All right, the last thing, I promise you the last thing that I want to highlight today, and that's going to be over here under the cameras, is the last product portfolio. Just a list of the cameras that we have. I'm just going to choose one of our cameras here. So I'll choose our bike room, the outdoor camera. So it's about 9 a.m. in San Francisco, so people are probably coming and going there, which is great. But let's say that we had some unauthorized access last Friday. What I can do is I can come in here and say, all right, show me what happened Friday at 9 a.m. Just type in natural language search, and it'll find that for me. And then I can say, actually, I don't want to have to sit here and fast forward through all of this. So instead, I'm going to do a motion search. I want to know what happened in this particular area last Friday around 9 a.m. I can highlight that area, and now if I scroll down on this page here, we're going to see a whole list of an event log, essentially, and I can double-click into it and find an activity where I see somebody coming or going in this area. And now I don't have to sit here and watch hours of video. I can instead say, show me when there is some type of movement in this particular area. And there we go. We have somebody that's even looking up at the camera, and that's it. They're coming in. So it's a great way to keep an eye on something. Let's say somebody put their backpack in this particular area over here. Well, I can highlight that area and search on that as well and see, all right, show me when there was footage of something happening in that particular area. So it's quite useful to have that detailed information there. Now you can also take a look at analytics and see over a period of time, for example, which areas were more popular than others. You can also set up different types of retention on the device because this is not reliant on an NVR system. You can come in here and say, I always want to record footage, or I only want to record footage during certain times of the day. I only want to keep footage that has movement in it, or I want to just keep everything. And based on these parameters, so for example, if I say motion-based retention, we see that you can change the amount of time that you can record and store on that camera itself. All right, last two things I promise here, and this is not product specific, just dashboard specific. You can set up different alerts to notify you in the event that something happens. This allows you to be more proactive with your network management. And then last, we have the role-based administration. So on this particular page, you can see the different users, and then you can define whether they're a teacher, whether they're, let's say, a receptionist and that can hand out temporary passcodes as a guest ambassador, whether they have full access or read-only access. So you have a lot of great detailed information that you can put in there. Now, if you do have questions about setting anything up, if you do decide to trial Meraki, you can go to documentation.meraki.com, type in your question here, and it's a great source of information. This is kept up to date by our support and our technical teams. And the last thing that I wanted to highlight is if you go to the Meraki website, this is a great place to keep an eye out for new products, things like brand new access points that we've just launched, or a new health system, the Meraki Wireless Health System. So we have a lot of great things on this particular page. All right, let's just finish up with the last few things here. In terms of the Meraki product lines we have on offer, I talked about most of them today, but we have the wireless access points, the security appliances, we have the access and aggregation switches, enterprise mobility management, communications, as well as security cameras. And as you saw, they're all managed via the exact same centralized dashboard. So what are your next steps? We offer free trials on every single Meraki product. So if you want to try something out, just let us know. Whether it's the highest end device or the lowest end device, we'll get it to you. We'll pay for shipping both ways in the EU. And we also have a team on our support team. They're called the Free Trial Support Team. That if you want somebody to help you set up your network trial gear or your evaluation gear, just let us know. Let your representative know that you'd like to take advantage of free trial support. It doesn't cost anything. It's just a service we have. And they can help you get everything set up there. Also, like I said, keep an eye on our website as well as our blog. We talk about new features, new products, things like that. And then join our community, community.meraki.com. This is a great forum where you can talk to your peers about different recommendations. You can also talk to Meraki employees about different questions you might have. So just let us know what you'd like to do. Get joined up there. And that's it. That's all the content I had for today. I do want to thank everybody for the wonderful time and attention. And I will be forwarding any questions that I didn't answer onto your Meraki representatives. But like I said, thank you, everyone. I hope to hear from you soon, and I hope everyone here has a wonderful rest of your day.